In the summer of 1976, Barbara Blakely married Frank Sinatra in Rancho Mirage, and from that afternoon on, she was one of the most photographed women in America. She was Barbara Sinatra for the next 4 decades. She ran a children's center, she sat at the best table in every room she walked into, and when she finally wrote her own book about her life, she called it Lady Blue Eyes. Before all of that, for 14 years, she had been married to a man named Herbert Marx. She lived in his house in Palm Springs. She knew what he did with his days after the world had stopped watching him. And almost nobody ever asked her about it, because the world had already decided what Herbert Marx was. The world knew him as Zeppo, the 4th Marx brother, the one nobody laughed at. There were 5 Marx Brothers, and by the time the act reached Broadway, there were 4 of them working. Groucho had the grease paint and the insults. Harpo had the horn and the silence. Chico had the accent and the piano. And Zeppo, the youngest, had the job of standing in the middle of all that and being a normal person. He played the straight man, he delivered the love interest scenes, he said the line that let Groucho hit the joke. It is the hardest job in comedy, and it comes with none of the credit. He did it in The Coconuts, in Animal Crackers, in Monkey Business, in Horse Feathers, in Duck Soup. 5 films, plus years on the stage before that, and in almost every review, he is a name in a list. He had not chosen it. He had inherited it. He was born in 1901 in New York, the last of the 5, and by the time he was old enough to want anything, the family business was already running without a vacancy. Their mother, Minnie, was the one driving it, booking the act, fighting the circuits, deciding who was what. Groucho was the talker. Harpo had found the silence by accident and kept it. Chico had the piano and the accent he could turn on for a booking agent. When the oldest brother Gummo left for the army in 1918, somebody had to fill the hole, and Herbert was the one standing there. He was 17. Nobody asked him what he wanted to be. The maddening part, according to everyone who worked with them, is that he was funny. Genuinely, dangerously funny. When Groucho got appendicitis during a run of the stage show, Zeppo went on in his place and did the part so well that the family found it unsettling rather than reassuring. Groucho said so himself, more than once in print, that his brother was the funniest of them off stage. But the act was already built. The parts were cast when he was a teenager, and there was no room to recast them. So in 1933, after Duck Soup, he quit. He was 33 years old, he was in one of the most successful comedy acts on earth, and he walked out of it. Everybody assumed he was finished. What he did instead was become an agent, and a very good one. He went into partnership and built a client list that at its peak carried Lana Turner and Barbara Stanwyck, and he represented his own brothers, which meant the man who had been the least important person in the act was now the one negotiating what the act was paid. He was good at it because he had spent 15 years watching how the business treated performers from the position of somebody it did not bother to flatter. But the agency was not the real second act either. The real one had been sitting there since he was a boy, when he had worked on cars in a garage and picked up machines because they interested him. He had a mechanic's hands and a mechanic's patience, and no reason for 30 years to use either. In 1941, he founded Marmon Products. The company made clamps. That sounds like nothing until you understand what a clamp does on an aircraft. Every line, every cable, every bundle of wiring on a plane has to be held to the airframe in a way that will not chafe, will not vibrate loose, will not fail at altitude or in a dive. Zeppo's design was a band with a cushioned liner and a quick release, and it was so much better than what the industry had that it became standard. He held the patent. He held others too over the years, including a heart monitoring device for cardiac patients and a heating pad that regulated its own temperature. Think about what that meant in 1941. The country was about to build aircraft faster than it had ever built anything, and every one of those airframes needed thousands of small fittings that could not be allowed to fail. A clamp that chafes a fuel line at 20,000 feet is not a small part. It is the whole airplane. Zeppo had solved it with a cushioned band and a latch a man could work with gloves on in the cold, and the orders came in the way orders come in during a war. Then came the contract that nobody in the family ever really talked about. The Army Air Forces needed a shackle assembly to carry the atomic bombs in the bomb bay of a B-29. The weapon weighed around 10,000 pounds, and it had to hang there for hours over open ocean and then let go cleanly, once, on command. If it let go early, the aircraft and everyone in it was gone. Marman Products built the assembly. When Fat Man went to Nagasaki on the 9th of August 1945, the Marman hardware was what held it. Engineers still call that style of fitting a Marman clamp today. It is on satellites. It is on spacecraft. The release band that separates the stages of a launch vehicle is a descendant of the same idea. The brother who was told he was the spare part had built the thing that held the heaviest object anyone had ever asked a machine to hold. Barbara Blakely met him in the desert. She had come out of Missouri by way of a modeling school and a first marriage. She had a young son, and Palm Springs in the late 50s was the place where Hollywood went to be off-duty. She married Herbert Marx in 1959. He was 58. She was in her 20s. By her own account of those years, the life was cards and tennis and the club, the long social circuit of a town built for people who had already made their money. And in the middle of it, there was her husband, who was not a performer in any part of his life she saw, and who kept working on gadgets. He had the patents. He had the mechanic's hands. Late in his life, he was still at it, still filing, still building things nobody was going to applaud. The marriage did not last. They divorced in 1973. 3 years later, she married the man who lived down the road, and the second half of her life was so loud that the first half more or less disappeared under it. When she died in 2017 at 90, the obituaries were about Frank. But she is the only person who could have told you the thing this story turns on, and it is not that she left him. It is that the man she left had already done the most consequential work of any Marx brother. And it made no difference at all to how anyone treated him, including the people who loved him. He was still the fourth one. He was still the one in the photograph you do not look at. Zeppo died in 1979 at 78 in Palm Springs, quietly, the way he had done nearly everything after the act. There is a still from Duck Soup that turns up in every retrospective. 4 brothers in a row, Groucho with the cigar, Harpo with the wig, Chico with the hat, and on the end, in an ordinary suit, a good-looking young man with his hands at his sides, doing the job of being the one nobody looks at. He is the only one in the photograph whose work is still flying. If you want more of the one's history filed in the wrong drawer, that is what this channel is for. There is a new one every week.